My daughter made me sign a power of attorney for the house. It's for your safety, Mom. I trustingly put my signature. A month later, she sold my house and said, "You have 24 hours to pack your things. You're going to a nursing home." But she didn't know that. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I never thought my own daughter would betray me like this, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Martha Collins, and for 43 years, I called the little yellow house on Maple Street my home. My husband Richard and I bought it back in 1982 when our daughter Carla was just 2 years old. We raised her there. We celebrated birthdays, Christmases, graduations. Richard passed away 5 years ago, and staying in that house kept me close to his memory. Every creaky floorboard, every chip in the kitchen counter told our story. I was doing fine on my own. Sure, I was 68, but I was healthy. I gardened, I volunteered at the library twice a week. I had my book club every Thursday. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and I would have coffee every morning. I wasn't some helpless old woman who couldn't take care of herself. Carla lived 30 minutes away with her husband, Rick. They'd visit maybe once a month, sometimes less. Rick worked in real estate, always talking about investment opportunities and market value. I never cared much for him, if I'm being honest. There was something slippery about him, something that made me check my purse after he left the room. The first strange thing happened in March. Carla started calling more often. At first, I was pleased. "Mom, how are you feeling?" she'd ask. "Are you remembering to take your medications? Are you eating well?" I thought she was just being a caring daughter. Was I really so naive? Then the visits increased. She'd drop by unannounced, her eyes scanning the house like she was taking inventory. "Mom, this place is getting too big for you," she said one afternoon, standing in my living room with her arms crossed. "All these stairs. What if you fall?" "I've been managing these stairs for 4 decades, Carla," I replied. "I'm perfectly fine." But she persisted. Every visit brought a new concern. The lawn was too much work. The house needed repairs I couldn't afford. I was isolated. What if I had an emergency and no one was there? The worst part? She started saying these things in front of her husband. Rick would nod along, adding his own observations. "Martha, Carla's right. At your age, you need to think practically. This house is worth a lot of money. You could sell it, move somewhere safer, have financial security." I should have seen it then. Should have recognized the hunger in his eyes when he looked at my home. In April, Carla brought papers to my house. "Mom, I need you to sign something," she said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. The same table where Richard and I had shared thousands of meals. "What is this?" I asked, reaching for my reading glasses. "Just a power of attorney," she said quickly. "It's for your safety, Mom. God forbid something happens to you. A stroke, an accident, anything. Someone needs to be able to make decisions, handle your finances, manage your property. It's just a precaution." Rick stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. "It's standard stuff, Martha. Everyone your age should have this in place." My hands trembled slightly as I looked at the papers. The legal language swam before my eyes. I wanted to read it carefully, but Carla kept talking, explaining, reassuring. She was my daughter, my only child. Why wouldn't I trust her? I signed. "There," Carla said, gathering the papers quickly. "Now I don't have to worry about you so much." She kissed my cheek. It felt cold. 4 weeks later, Carla's car pulled into my driveway on a Tuesday morning. I was watering my roses, the ones Richard had planted for our 20th anniversary. She got out of the car, and something about her face made my stomach drop. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. No hello, no how are you. Just those 5 words that would shatter my world. I sold the house. The watering can slipped from my hand. Water pooled around my feet, soaking into the soil, into the earth that held 43 years of my life. You what? The house is sold. Closing is in 2 weeks. You have 24 hours to pack what you can. I've found you a place at Sunset Meadows. It's a very nice nursing home, Mom. You'll be taken care of there. I stood there in my garden, staring at my daughter as if she were a stranger. Because in that moment, she was. You can't just sell my house, I whispered. This is my home. Richard and I— Dad's gone, Mom, Carla interrupted, her voice flat. And that power of attorney you signed gives me full legal right to manage your property. I'm doing what's best for you. Best for me? My voice cracked. Carla, this is my life. You can't— 24 hours, Mom. I suggest you start packing. She turned and walked back to her car. Just like that. She drove away and left me standing there, drowning in disbelief. I don't remember walking back inside. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd signed those papers, and the reality crashed over me in waves. My house was gone. The home Richard and I built together, where we raised our daughter, where every room held memories I couldn't pack into boxes. Sold. Stolen, really, though she'd done it legally. How could I have been so stupid, so trusting? I thought about calling someone, but who? The police? She had legal documents, a lawyer. With what money? My savings were modest, and lawyer fees were expensive. Besides, could I really afford to fight my own daughter in court while also trying to find a place to live? That first night, I didn't sleep. I walked through every room of my house, touching the walls, remembering. Richard's study, where he'd spent hours reading. Carla's childhood bedroom, still painted the lavender she'd chosen when she was 12. Our bedroom, where Richard had taken his last breath, my hand in his. Was I really going to let someone take this from me without a fight? Even if that someone was my own daughter. By morning, something had shifted inside me. The shock had burned away, leaving something harder behind. Anger, yes, but also clarity. I made coffee and sat down with a notepad. The same notepad I used for grocery lists and book club notes. But now I was making a different kind of list. What did I actually know? 1. Carla had power of attorney over my property. 2. She'd sold the house without my knowledge or consent. 3. I had 24 hours. But wait. Did power of attorney really work like that? Could she just sell my house while I was still mentally competent and living in it? Something didn't feel right about this. Richard had been meticulous about legal matters. He'd taught me to always read the fine print, to never sign anything without understanding it completely. I'd failed him in that moment with Carla, but maybe it wasn't too late to honor his memory now. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She arrived within 10 minutes, her face full of concern when I told her what happened. Martha, that doesn't sound legal, she said immediately. My sister had power of attorney for our mother, but Mom still had all her rights as long as she was competent. She couldn't just sell the house out from under her. Hope flickered in my chest. Really? You need to talk to a lawyer. Today. Mrs. Patterson drove me to the library. I didn't have a computer, but the library did. The young librarian, Sophie, helped me search. We found articles about elder financial abuse, about power of attorney laws, about property rights. And there it was, in black and white. A power of attorney didn't give someone the right to sell your property without your consent unless you were declared mentally incompetent. and I certainly wasn't that. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I printed out the articles. I had something now: knowledge, understanding, a direction. Sophie helped me look up legal aid services in the area. "There's a free legal clinic every Wednesday at the community center," she said. "They help seniors with exactly this kind of thing." It was Tuesday. The clinic was tomorrow. One day before Carla's deadline, I went home and started making phone calls. I called the county recorder's office. No record of my house being sold yet. I called Sunset Meadows Nursing Home. They had no reservation under my name. Carla had lied about that too. Each discovery fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about saving my house anymore. This was about standing up to someone who'd looked me in the eye, used my trust, and tried to steal my entire life from me. My daughter wanted to put me away, to treat me like I was senile and helpless. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Wednesday morning, I dressed carefully. Not the comfortable house dress I usually wore, but the navy blue suit I'd bought for Richard's funeral. I wanted to look competent, capable. I wanted to look like someone who couldn't be dismissed. Mrs. Patterson drove me to the community center. My stomach churned with nerves, but I kept my spine straight. The legal clinic was held in a small conference room. A young attorney named David Chen greeted me, his genuine smile putting me slightly at ease. "Mrs. Collins, please sit down. How can I help you?" I told him everything: the power of attorney, the sale, Carla's 24-hour ultimatum. He listened without interrupting, taking notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Collins, I need to ask you some questions. Do you know what day it is?" "Wednesday, May 14th. "Who's the president?" I answered correctly. He asked me about my medications, my daily routines, my ability to manage my finances. After several minutes, he nodded. "Mrs. Collins, you are clearly mentally competent, which means your daughter cannot legally sell your house without your explicit consent, power of attorney or not. What she's attempting is called financial elder abuse, and it's a crime." The relief that washed through me was so intense I nearly cried. "So I can stop this?" "Yes. But we need to act immediately." He started typing on his laptop. "I'm going to help you file for an emergency restraining order against the sale. We'll also need to revoke the power of attorney immediately and report this to Adult Protective Services." Over the next 2 hours, David helped me complete forms, make calls, and understand my rights. He explained that we'd need to go to the courthouse, file documents, potentially appear before a judge. It was overwhelming, but for the first time since Carla's betrayal, I felt like I wasn't drowning. We went to the courthouse. The clerk processed my emergency filing. By 3 p.m., I had an injunction preventing any sale of my property pending a hearing. "Keep this with you at all times," David instructed, handing me copies of everything. "And Mrs. Collins? Don't stay in that house alone tonight. Do you have somewhere safe you can go?" I stayed with Mrs. Patterson that night. At 8 p.m., my phone rang. Carla. "Mom, where are you? I came by the house to help you pack, and you're not there." I took a breath. "I'm not packing, Carla." Silence. Then, "What?" "I spoke to a lawyer. What you're doing is illegal. I've filed an injunction against the sale." "You what?" Her voice rose. "Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You lied to me. You betrayed me. You tried to steal my home. I'm your daughter. I'm trying to help you. By throwing me into a nursing home and selling my house without my knowledge? That's not help, Carla. That's theft." I could hear Rick's voice in the background, angry, urgent. Then Carla again. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." "The only mistake I made was trusting you." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good. Terrifying, but good. The next morning, Thursday, I returned home with Mrs. Patterson. I needed to find those power of attorney documents, needed to understand exactly what I'd signed. I searched Richard's old filing cabinet where I kept important papers. And that's when I found it. Hidden behind our old tax returns was a folder I didn't recognize. Inside were documents, emails, printed text messages. Between Carla and Rick. Dated from February, 2 months before they'd asked me to sign the power of attorney. My blood ran cold as I read. Once Mom signs the POA, we can liquidate everything. The house alone is worth $480,000. We can clear our debts and finally buy that condo we want. What about your mother? There's a state-run facility. Medicaid will cover it. She'll be fine. And she won't fight it? She's old, Rick. She'll do what I tell her. She always has. There were more. Discussions about forging my signature if I refused to sign. Plans to claim I was mentally incompetent if I resisted. A consultation with a real estate agent from March showing my house, planning the sale before I'd even signed the documents. This wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't concern for my welfare. This was a calculated plan to steal everything I had. I photocopied everything, every email, every text message, every piece of evidence of their premeditation. Then I called David Chen. I found proof, I told him. Proof that they planned this months in advance. Proof that they never cared about my well-being. Mrs. Collins, he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Bring everything to my office. We're not just stopping this sale anymore. We're going to make sure your daughter faces consequences for what she tried to do. Friday afternoon, I sat in David Chen's office as he reviewed the documents I'd found. His expression grew darker with each page. "This is gold, Mrs. Collins," he said finally. "This proves premeditation, intent to defraud, conspiracy. We're no longer just looking at civil violations. This could have criminal implications." "What do we do now?" I asked. "We file a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's Office. We also request a full hearing to permanently revoke the power of attorney and investigate whether it was obtained under false pretenses." He looked up at me. "Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because when your daughter realizes what we have, she won't go quietly." "I'm prepared," I said, and I meant it. By Monday morning, Carla and Rick had been served with the formal complaints. David had warned me they'd respond quickly, but I didn't expect what happened next. At 6 p.m., they showed up at my house. Both of them. I watched through the window as they got out of their car. Rick looked furious. Carla looked scared. I opened the door before they could knock, but I didn't invite them in. "How could you do this?" Carla demanded. "I'm your daughter. You're trying to have me arrested." "You tried to steal my house and put me in a state facility," I replied calmly. "What did you expect?" Rick stepped forward, his face red. "You senile old woman. Do you have any idea what you've done? We have lawyers, too. We'll prove you're mentally incompetent. We'll have you declared unfit to make your own decisions." "You can try," I said. "But I've been evaluated by medical professionals. I have documentation of my competency. What do you have? Forged plans and greedy intentions?" His expression shifted from anger to something colder. "You think you're clever? You think some free clinic lawyer can stand up to what we'll bring against you? We'll drag this out for years. We'll bleed you dry in legal fees. You'll lose everything trying to fight us." "Rick," Carla touched his arm, but he shook her off. "And who'll take care of you then?" he continued. "You think your neighbors will stick around when this gets messy? You're alone, Martha. An old woman living in a house that's too big for her with no family support. The court will see that. They'll see that Carla was trying to help you, and you responded with paranoid accusations." For a moment, fear flickered through me. He was right about one thing. I was alone. Carla was my only child. I had no other family. But then I thought of Richard, of the yellow house behind me, of the life they'd tried to steal. Get off my property, I said quietly. Both of you. And if you come back without a court order, I'm calling the police. Mom, Carla started. You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was worth more to you as a victim than as your mother. Now leave. Rick grabbed Carla's arm. Come on, we're wasting our time with her. Let her lawyers serve her with our countersuit. She'll change her tune when she sees what real legal action looks like. They left, tires squealing as they pulled away. I closed the door and locked it, my whole body trembling. Mrs. Patterson appeared from the kitchen. I'd asked her to wait there during the confrontation. You were so strong, she said, hugging me. But I didn't feel strong. I felt exhausted, scared. Rick's threats echoed in my mind. Years of legal battles, mounting costs, being declared incompetent. Could I really fight this? David Chen called me the next morning. Martha, I heard about the confrontation. Are you okay? They threatened to countersue, to have me declared incompetent, to drag this out until I can't afford to fight anymore. Empty threats, David said firmly. They're panicking because they know we have evidence. But Martha, this is going to be stressful. You need to take care of yourself. The hearing isn't for 3 weeks. Take some time to rest, to gather your strength. You've done the hard part already. You've stood up to them. He was right. I'd been running on adrenaline for days. I needed to breathe, to regroup. For the next few days, I tried to find some normalcy. I worked in my garden. I went to book club. I had coffee with Mrs. Patterson. But in quiet moments, doubt crept in. Had I done the right thing? Would fighting my own daughter in court destroy me? Then I'd remember those emails, those cold, calculated plans to dispose of me like I was garbage. And I'd remember why I was fighting. The call came on Thursday, 10 days after the confrontation. But it wasn't from Carla. It was from my cousin Jennifer, who lived 2 states away and whom I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. Martha? Hi, it's Jenny. I heard about what's happening with you and Carla. Of course she had. Carla must have called her, fed her some version of events designed to make me look unreasonable. Carla's very worried about you, Jennifer continued. She told me about the misunderstanding with the house. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I interrupted. She tried to sell my home without my consent. Well, yes, but Martha, she's your daughter. She was trying to help. Maybe she went about it the wrong way, but her heart was in the right place. Don't you think you're being a bit harsh? Taking legal action against your own child? There it was. The gentle guilt trip. The suggestion that I was the unreasonable one. Jennifer, did Carla tell you she planned this for months? That she and Rick wanted to use the money to buy themselves a condo and put me in a state-run facility? Silence. She said you'd gotten some confused ideas, that you might be having some memory issues. I have proof, Jennifer. Emails, text messages. Their entire plan laid out in black and white. This wasn't about helping me. This was about stealing from me. Another pause. Even so, is it worth destroying your relationship with your only daughter? Family is everything, Martha. Once it's broken, you can't get it back. I felt the manipulation in her words, the attempt to make me doubt myself. How many other people had Carla called? How many were being told I was confused, paranoid, cruel? My relationship with Carla was destroyed the moment she decided my home was worth more than my trust, I said quietly. Goodbye, Jennifer. I hung up, but the call left me unsettled. Over the next few days, more came. An old colleague of Richard's, a distant relative, even my former pastor from the church I'd stopped attending after Richard died, all with the same message. Forgive, reconcile, don't be stubborn. Family is family. Carla was waging a different kind of war now, not with threats, but with social pressure, making me look like the villain in this story. I started doubting myself again. Was I wrong to push this so far? Should I just accept some compromise, take what I could get, and salvage what remained of my relationship with my daughter? Then I attended book club that Thursday. I'd almost canceled, feeling too emotionally drained, but Mrs. Patterson insisted. When I arrived at Carol's house, the usual 5 members were there. They greeted me warmly, but I could see the questions in their eyes. Small town, word had gotten around. "Martha," Carol said gently, "we heard you're having some trouble with Carla." I braced myself for another lecture about forgiveness and family. Instead, Carol continued. "My sister went through something similar with her son. Tried to get control of her finances, wanted to put her in a home. It's more common than people think." I looked up surprised. "It's elder abuse," added Patricia, another member. "Financial exploitation of seniors is an epidemic, and it's usually family members who do it." "You're doing the right thing fighting back," said Eleanor firmly. "My aunt didn't. She let her son bully her into signing over everything. She died in a Medicaid facility 6 months later, alone, while he lived in her house. Don't let that happen to you." Something broke open in my chest. I'd been carrying this weight, feeling isolated and judged, and here were these women, my community, telling me I wasn't wrong. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being cruel. "I have moments where I wonder if I should just give up," I admitted. "Carla's been calling everyone we know, making me sound like I'm the problem." "Of course she is," Carol said, "because she knows what she did was wrong, and she's trying to control the narrative. But we know you, Martha. We've known you for years. We know you're sharp as a tack and that you wouldn't take legal action without good reason." They rallied around me that evening in ways I hadn't expected. Patricia's husband was a retired accountant. He offered to help me review my finances, make sure everything was protected. Eleanor knew a social worker who specialized in elder rights. She gave me her number. Carol simply hugged me and told me I was brave. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I wasn't alone. I had people who believed in me, who understood what I was facing. When Jennifer called again 2 days later, still pushing for reconciliation, I was ready. "Jennifer, I appreciate your concern, but my decision is final. What Carla did was calculated and cruel, and I will not be manipulated into forgetting that. If you want to support someone, support the truth." This time, my voice didn't waver at all. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday. On Sunday afternoon, 2 days before, Carla appeared at my door. Alone this time, without Rick. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She was wearing the blue cardigan I'd given her last Christmas. "Mom," she said softly, "please, can we talk? Just the two of us?" Every instinct screamed not to let her in, but something in her voice, something that sounded like the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she was scared, made me hesitate. "5 minutes," I said, stepping aside. We sat in the living room. She looked around, her eyes lingering on the family photos on the wall. Her at her high school graduation, her wedding day. Richard holding her as a baby. "I miss Dad," she said quietly. "I miss him so much, Mom." My throat tightened. "I do too. This house, being here, it's full of memories of him, of us, of when we were a real family." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." "Then why did you do this?" I asked. "Why did you try to take everything from me?" "I made a mistake," she said. "Rick and we're in debt, Mom. Bad debt. We were desperate, and he convinced me that selling the house was the answer, that you'd be better off somewhere you didn't have to worry about maintenance and bills. I listened to him instead of my heart." She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't take hers either. "I'm sorry," she continued. "I'm so, so sorry. I was wrong. But Mom, please, drop the legal action. We can work this out as a family. You can stay in the house. I'll tear up the power of attorney. We'll pretend none of this ever happened. It sounded so reasonable, so tempting. My daughter apologizing, asking for forgiveness. Wasn't this what I wanted? But then I remembered David's words. When they realize the evidence we have, they'll try anything. What about the hearing on Tuesday? I asked carefully. We'll cancel it. Both sides drop everything. Clean slate. She squeezed my hand. Please, Mom, I'm your daughter. You raised me. Don't you think I deserve a second chance? And the debt you and Rick are in? That just goes away? She blinked. We'll figure it out. It's not your problem. But it was my problem when you needed my house to solve it. Her expression flickered. Just for a second, something cold passed through her eyes. But then the tears were back. I know. I was wrong. But I'm trying to make it right now. By asking me to drop the legal case? Carla, you tried to commit fraud. You planned for months to steal my home. And now you want me to just forget that happened? It's not stealing if I'm your daughter. Yes, it is, I said firmly. Especially because you're my daughter. You used my trust against me. The tears stopped. Just like that. She sat back, and when she looked at me again, the mask was gone. You're actually going to do this, she said flatly. You're actually going to court to destroy your own daughter. I'm going to court to protect myself from someone who tried to rob me. You self-righteous. She stopped herself, took a breath. Fine. You want to play it this way? Rick was right. You're a stubborn, paranoid old woman who's too proud to accept help. Is that what you'll tell the judge? After he sees the emails where you and Rick planned to put me in a state facility so you could buy a condo? Her face went white. She stood up abruptly. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. No, I said, standing to face her. The biggest mistake of my life was trusting you. You think you'll win? Her voice rose. You think your free clinic lawyer can compete with what we'll bring? We'll prove you're incompetent. We'll show the court you're paranoid, delusional. We'll bring medical experts, psychiatrists. By the time we're done, you won't even be allowed to make your own medical decisions, let alone keep this house. Get out, I said quietly. You'll die alone in a state facility, and it will be your own fault, she was shouting now. Your own stubborn, stupid fault. Get out, I shouted back. She grabbed her purse and stormed to the door. Before she left, she turned back. I hope you're happy, Mom. You've chosen a house over your own daughter. When you're lying in some hospital bed with no one who cares about you, remember, you did this to yourself. The door slammed. I stood there, shaking, as her car sped away. Mrs. Patterson came over within minutes. She'd seen Carla's car, had been watching from her window. She found me sitting on the couch, tears streaming down my face. She tried to manipulate me, I said. Fake apology, fake tears. And when that didn't work, she threatened me again. Oh, Martha. She said I'd die alone, that I'd chosen a house over her. I looked at Mrs. Patterson. Did I? Am I wrong? You chose dignity over abuse, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. You chose self-respect over being victimized. That's not wrong, Martha. That's survival. That night, I barely slept. Fear gnawed at me. What if Carla was right? What if they could prove I was incompetent? What if I lost everything trying to fight them? But then morning came, and with it, a cold, hard clarity. I'd survived Richard's death. I'd survived 68 years of life's challenges. I would survive this too. Carla wanted war. She'd get one. Tuesday morning, I wore the same navy suit. David Chen met me at the courthouse steps carrying a thick folder of documents. Are you ready? He asked. I am, I said, and I meant it. The hearing was held in a small courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, presided. Carla and Rick sat on one side with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit named Gerald Hendricks. I sat on the other side with David. Judge Morrison reviewed the case summary, then looked up. This is a hearing to determine the validity of a power of attorney and to investigate allegations of elder financial abuse. Mr. Hendricks, you may begin. Hendricks stood, smooth and confident. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of family conflict being weaponized through the legal system. Mrs. Collins granted her daughter, Carla Bennett, power of attorney out of concern for her own declining health and cognitive function. Mrs. Bennett, acting in good faith and in her mother's best interests, made arrangements for her mother's care and financial security. Instead of gratitude, she's been met with false accusations and legal harassment. He painted a picture of Carla as a devoted daughter, burdened by an aging mother who was becoming paranoid and difficult. He suggested I was experiencing early dementia, that my accusations were products of confusion and fear. We asked the court to uphold the power of attorney and dismiss these baseless claims, he concluded. Then it was David's turn. Your Honor, he began, his voice calm but firm. This is not a case of a confused elderly woman misunderstanding her daughter's good intentions. This is a case of calculated fraud, premeditated theft, and elder abuse. And we have documentation to prove it. He presented the emails first, each one displayed on a screen for the court to see. Carla and Rick's discussions about liquidating my assets, their plans to put me in a state facility, their consultation with a real estate agent before I'd even signed the power of attorney. I watched Carla's face as the emails appeared. She went pale, her hands gripping the table. Your Honor, Hendricks interrupted, private correspondence between husband and wife is not evidence of criminal intent. It is when it shows premeditation to commit fraud, David countered. He turned to me. Mrs. Collins, can you tell the court about your cognitive state? I stood, my voice steady. Your Honor, I'm 68 years old. I manage my own finances, maintain my home, volunteer regularly at the library, and participate in a book club. I have no diagnosed cognitive impairments. I was evaluated by Dr. Sarah Feldman just last week. David handed the judge my medical evaluation. She found me fully competent. Your Honor, if I may? Hendricks stood. Mrs. Bennett, would you like to address the court? Carla stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, my mother. She's not the woman she used to be. She forgets things. She gets confused. I was terrified something would happen to her living alone in that big house. I was only trying to protect her by planning to profit almost $500,000 from the sale, David interjected. Mrs. Bennett, isn't it true that you and your husband are facing foreclosure on your own home? Rick stood abruptly. That's irrelevant. Sit down, Mr. Bennett, Judge Morrison said sharply. Answer the question, Mrs. Bennett. Carla's composure cracked. We have some financial difficulties, yes, but that has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with it, David said. He presented more documents. Financial records showing Carla and Rick's debts, mortgage arrears, maxed out credit cards. You needed money desperately. Your mother's house was the solution. So you manipulated her into signing over power of attorney under false pretenses, then immediately moved to sell her property and institutionalize her. That's not true, Carla's voice rose. I love my mother. Everything I did was for her own good. Then why? David asked quietly. Did you tell her she had 24 hours to pack? Why arrange a nursing home placement without her knowledge? Why sell the house without even informing her? She wouldn't have understood. Because she would have said no, David said. Because she's a competent adult who has every right to make her own decisions about her own property. You didn't want her consent. You wanted her compliance. Judge Morrison looked at Carla. Mrs. Bennett, did you or did you not tell your mother the power of attorney was just for her safety? Carla hesitated. Yes, but. And did you inform her that you intended to sell her house? She needed professional care. Answer yes or no. No. The judge turned to the documentation David had provided. The room was silent except for the rustling of papers. After what felt like an eternity, Judge Morrison looked up. I've seen enough, she said. The power of attorney is hereby revoked, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of elder financial abuse and fraud. She looked directly at Carla and Rick. What you attempted to do to your mother is not only morally reprehensible, it's criminal. Carla burst into tears, real ones this time, tears of panic rather than manipulation. Rick sat frozen, his face ashen. Mrs. Collins, the judge continued, her voice softening, I'm sorry you had to endure this. Your home remains your property, and you retain all rights to it. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my own face. But these were tears of relief. The aftermath of the hearing moved swiftly. Within 2 weeks, the district attorney's office filed criminal charges against Carla and Rick. Fraud, attempted theft, elder abuse, each charge carrying potential prison time. Their lawyer, Hendricks, disappeared fast when he realized their money had run out and they couldn't pay him. David Chen helped me file a civil lawsuit as well, seeking damages for emotional distress and the costs I'd incurred defending myself. They tried to steal your life, he said. They should pay for that attempt. Mrs. Patterson sat with me when the sheriff came to deliver the restraining order to Carla's house. She was being evicted. The foreclosure she and Rick had been trying to avoid by selling my home had gone through. They had 30 days to vacate. Where will they go? I asked David. That's not your concern anymore, he replied gently. You're allowed to care about your daughter, Martha. But you're not responsible for the consequences of her choices. I struggled with that concept for days. Part of me, the mother part that had raised her, bandaged her scraped knees, celebrated her achievements, wanted to help. Wanted to offer her money for rent. Wanted to make sure she'd be okay. But then I'd remember the emails, the cold calculation. She'll do what I tell her. She always has. That wasn't love. That was control, and I refused to enable it anymore. The criminal trial took place 3 months later. I sat in the courtroom and watched as the prosecutor laid out the evidence. The emails, the financial records, the timeline of their deception. Carla tried to testify, tried to claim she'd been pressured by Rick, that she'd never really intended to go through with it. But the prosecutor showed the jury Carla's own emails, written when Rick wasn't even in the room. Messages to the real estate agent. Inquiries to state-run nursing facilities. Research on how to declare someone mentally incompetent. Every piece of evidence screamed premeditation, calculation, intent. This wasn't a moment of weakness, the prosecutor argued. This was months of planning to defraud and abuse a vulnerable senior citizen who happened to be the defendant's own mother. Rick tried to play the sympathy card, talking about their financial stress, their desperation. But the jury saw through it. Plenty of people faced financial hardship without resorting to elder abuse. When the verdict came back, I held Mrs. Patterson's hand. The forewoman stood, her face serious. On the count of fraud in the first degree, we find the defendant Carla Bennett guilty. On the count of attempted theft, we find the defendant Carla Bennett guilty. On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant Carla Bennett guilty. The same for Rick. Guilty on all counts. Carla collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Rick sat rigid, his jaw clenched. Neither of them looked at me, but the prosecutor did. She gave me a small nod. Justice, that nod said. Finally, justice. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Rick received 18 months in prison. Carla, because she had no prior record and showed some remorse, received 12 months plus 3 years probation. Both were ordered to pay restitution, not that they had anything left to pay with. The judge added something else, though. Something I hadn't expected. Mrs. Bennett, Judge Morrison said, looking directly at Carla. I've presided over many cases in my career. I've seen people do terrible things. But what makes your crime particularly heinous is the betrayal at its core. Your mother trusted you implicitly because you were her daughter. You weaponized that trust to try to steal everything she had. The court hopes that during your incarceration, you'll reflect deeply on what that says about your character. Carla tried to speak, to plead, but the judge wasn't finished. And let me be clear, if you ever contact Mrs. Collins again without her explicit permission, you will be in violation of your restraining order and will serve additional time. Your mother deserves to live the rest of her life in peace, free from manipulation or harassment. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Carla whispered. I attended the sentencing hearing. Carla looked at me across the courtroom, her eyes pleading. I saw her mouth the words, "I'm sorry, Mom." Maybe she was. Maybe prison had finally made her understand what she'd done. Or maybe she was just sorry she'd been caught. I looked away. The civil lawsuit was settled out of court. They had no assets, but the judgment would follow them for years. Garnished wages, seized tax returns, a permanent black mark on their financial futures. Everything they'd tried to steal from me had been the instrument of their complete destruction. David explained the restitution process to me. It'll take years for you to see any significant money, if ever. But the judgment is there. It's a legal recognition of the harm they tried to cause you. I don't care about the money, I told him. I care about the principle. They need to know that actions have consequences. As for me, I returned to my yellow house on Maple Street. I had the locks changed, something I should have done long ago. I planted new roses in the garden, different varieties from the ones Richard had chosen, because this was a new chapter now. The neighbors rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Mrs. Patterson organized a welcome home dinner. Carol's husband, a contractor, fixed the loose boards on my porch for free. Patricia set up a neighborhood watch schedule, people checking on me not because I was helpless, but because they cared. I joined a support group for elder abuse survivors. Listening to their stories, I realized how lucky I'd been to catch Carla's plan in time. So many others hadn't. They'd lost everything: homes, savings, dignity, to family members who saw them as resources to exploit rather than people to love. I started volunteering with an organization that helped seniors understand their legal rights. I spoke at community centers, libraries, senior centers. I told my story without shame because it wasn't my shame to carry. It was Carla's. Don't trust blindly, I'd tell audiences. Not even family, especially not family, because they're the ones with the most access and the most opportunity to hurt you. Read everything before you sign. Ask questions. And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. One elderly woman approached me after a presentation, tears in her eyes. "My son's been pressuring me to sign papers," she said. "I didn't want to seem difficult, but you've made me realize I need to protect myself." I gave her David Chen's number. 6 months after the trial, I was working in my garden when I saw a car slow down in front of my house. My heart jumped. Was it Carla? She'd been released on parole early for good behavior, but it was just someone turning around in my driveway, I took a breath and returned to my roses. I'd won. Not just the legal battle, but something more important. I'd reclaimed my dignity, my autonomy, my right to make my own choices about my own life. The yellow house on Maple Street was still mine, and this time, I knew exactly what it was worth. Not in dollars, but in the memories it held, the life it represented, the future it secured. This time, no one would take that from me. Not ever again. A year after the trial, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. I'd started a small consulting service, helping other seniors navigate legal documents and understand their rights. It wasn't about money, I charged nothing, but about purpose. Every person I helped felt like a small victory against the people who preyed on the vulnerable. The organization I volunteered with asked me to serve on their board of directors. Me, Martha Collins, who a year ago had nearly lost everything, now helping shape policy to protect other seniors. David Chen became more than just my lawyer. He became a friend. We had coffee once a month, discussing cases, life, the complexity of family relationships. "You've turned your trauma into advocacy," he told me once. "That takes real strength." My book club expanded. We started meeting twice a month instead of once, and 3 new members joined. These women had stood by me through the worst period of my life. They were my family now, chosen rather than blood. I even started dating. Arthur Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's widower brother, had moved to town 6 months ago. We'd had dinner a few times, gone to the theater once. Nothing serious, but it was nice. He made me laugh. He treated me like a person, not a problem to solve. "I'm not looking to replace Richard," I told him honestly. "I'm not looking to replace my Anne either," he replied. "But maybe we could just enjoy each other's company?" We could, and we did. I renovated Richard's old study, turned it into a crafts room. I'd always wanted to try watercolor painting. The paintings weren't good. I was a beginner, but every brushstroke felt like reclaiming space, reclaiming life. I took a trip to the coast, something I'd always wanted to do. I spent a week walking on the beach, reading, breathing in the salt air. It was glorious. My house felt alive again, not haunted by the past, but honored by it. I kept Richard's photos up, kept the memories close, but I also made new ones. Dinner parties, garden clubs, the neighborhood kids coming by to help me plant bulbs in exchange for cookies. The local newspaper did a story about my advocacy work. "Local woman turns personal tragedy into mission to help others," the headline read. I framed it as a reminder. I'd survived. I was 70 years old and felt more vital than I had in a decade. Meanwhile, Carla's life had crumbled completely. I didn't seek out information about her, but small towns talk. Mrs. Patterson would sometimes mention what she'd heard, always with a carefully neutral expression. Carla had served 8 months before parole. She'd lost her nursing license. A felony conviction meant automatic revocation. 15 years of career building, gone. She'd tried appealing, but the nursing board was unmoved. Elder abuse by a healthcare professional was considered especially egregious. The revocation was permanent. Rick served his full sentence. When he got out, whatever relationship they'd had was poisoned. They blamed each other, fought constantly. Within 2 months, he'd left her, moved across the country, trying to start fresh. She was living in a small apartment on the rough side of town, working as a cashier at a discount store. The restitution garnished her wages, leaving her barely enough to survive. She'd applied for nursing positions in other states, but the conviction followed her everywhere. She'd tried to get work as a home health aide, but agencies found her court records online. Nobody wanted someone convicted of elder abuse caring for vulnerable patients. Through Patricia, I heard Carla had tried to reach out to old friends. Most wanted nothing to do with her. The ones who listened heard her version, that I'd been cruel, unforgiving, that she'd made one mistake and I'd destroyed her life. But people had seen the court documents. They knew the truth. They saw how I'd emerged, strong, active, engaged, and compared that to Carla's bitterness and excuses. I saw her at the grocery store last week, Mrs. Patterson told me one morning. She looked defeated, older than her years. She saw me and turned away like she was ashamed. I felt a flicker of something complicated. This was still my daughter, but she was also the woman who'd tried to rob me blind. She made her choices, I said quietly. She did, Mrs. Patterson agreed, and she's living with the consequences. Rick was working construction now, day labor, whatever he could get. The real estate career he'd built? Gone. The condo he and Carla had dreamed of buying with my money? He was living in a trailer park, sharing a run-down mobile home, struggling to make rent. Sometimes I wondered if Carla thought about it, about how different things could have been if she'd just been honest. If she'd come to me and said, "Mom, we're in trouble. We need help." Would I have helped? Maybe. Not with $480,000, but with something. Instead, she'd chosen deception, betrayal. I'd offered her one chance to make things right before the hearing. She'd chosen to double down on her lies instead. These were her consequences, not mine to carry. I focused on my new life, my new purpose. I'd been given a second chance, not just to keep my home, but to find meaning beyond it, to help others, to build real relationships based on trust and respect. I'd survived my daughter's betrayal, and not just survived. I'd thrived. The yellow house on Maple Street stood strong, just like me, and inside it I was finally, truly free. Looking back now, I understand the most important lesson. Trust must be earned, even from family, especially from family. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. That dignity matters more than keeping peace. That sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. I was lucky. I caught the deception in time. I had resources, support, people who believed me. Not everyone does. So I ask you, if someone you trusted asked you to sign away your rights for your own good, would you question them? Would you read the fine print? Would you have the courage to say no? Because predators count on your politeness, your trust, your reluctance to cause conflict. Don't let them. If my story resonated with you, share it. Comment below about what you would have done. Subscribe for more stories about standing up against injustice. And if you're facing something similar, please seek help. You deserve to live with dignity, security, and respect. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your home is more than just a building. It's your life, your memories, your autonomy. Never let anyone take that from you, not even family, especially not family.